deadlines are coming up, and if you don't know, you won't be able to vote and your voice won't be heard. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see some of the information that I just want to go over, so that we all can just be in tune and we all can be knowledgeable of what's happening when it comes to voting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so our initiative is Black Lives Matter. Change starts with your vote, okay? And some of the things that we're going to be going over tonight is how and where to register to vote, dates for the primary and general elections, vote by mail information. We also call that the absentee ballot. Just information about the 2020 candidates and their roles. Oftentimes we elect people and we have no idea what their position is, so it's just good to know that information so that we know who we're voting for. We definitely want to invite everyone to be a part of our Fed squad volunteers, and we'll get more in depth with that as we go further along with the presentation. And then just, talk about the resources for voting. There's a lot of resources, but, there's a couple important resources that we have out there that's important for everyone to check out for voting. So a lot of questions come up. Where do I go to register to vote? One of the most important websites that you can go to is your supervisor of elections website for your county. I represent Broward, so I'm very knowledgeable in regards to my supervisor of elections website, but every county has one, Dade County, Broward, Palm Beach, St. Lucie County. So everyone has their own supervisor of elections website, and it's important that you go to that website because it's going to direct you as to where to register to vote. It's going to have tons of information about candidates, information in regards to dates for the primary election and the general election. It's going to tell you when early voting is going to start. It's going to give you so much information. I know for Broward County, I can speak for Broward because I live in Broward County. There's so much information that I was taken aback, but it walks you through everything. It tells you exactly what you need to do. So the most important thing that I can stress tonight is make sure you visit and you go to your supervisor of election website. So important that you do that. If you want to know the actual website where to go to register to vote, it is registertovoteflorida.gov. Okay, registertovoteflorida.gov, and that's where you'll go to register to vote. Now, I know there are some people who may not have their own home or may be homeless. In this fight for voting, we want every voice to be heard, every voice. And so for our homeless or people who don't have their own home, you can vote, but there are some things in place that, the state has put in place for those who are homeless. If you are homeless, if you live in a shelter and you get mail at that shelter or a rescue mission, you get mail there, you can use that place as a place of residence, and you can use that as an address on your application when you're doing your register to vote. The only stipulation with that is if a homeless person doesn't remember their social security number, they don't have a license, a Florida driver's license, when they go on the website, they will have to click that, and then they will have to either have someone print it out for them and mail it to the supervisor of election, or someone can drive it to the supervisor of election office. But we want every voice to be heard. That's the most important thing. So please don't count the homeless out. Their voice can be heard as well, but there's just steps, regarding getting their registration done. Now, here's what's important right now. The primary election and the general election. The primary election is August 18th, okay? August 18th. So in order for your voice to be heard in the primary election, if you never registered to vote, the deadline for the primary election to register to vote will be on July 20th. As we all know, today is June 25th. July 20th is almost 3 weeks from now. So we want every voice to be heard. And so if you have not registered to vote, we want you to go on and get registered, because it takes about 2 weeks for the supervisor of elections to just get all the application, everything to go through, and you to get your information back to just make sure you are registered officially. So we want your voice to be heard. So July 20th is such an important date for everyone. So we want your voice to be heard in the primary election. So we want you to be registered before July 20th so that your voice can be heard for the primary election. Now, when it comes to early voting for primary election, every county has their own dates. And I looked at the websites last night again just to look at it. I know Palm Beach, I believe it said that they will start early voting August 3rd. But in Broward, we won't start early voting until August 8th. So that's why I can't stress enough for everyone to go on their supervisor of election website for your county, because what I see for my county in Broward may not be the same information as it comes to early voting. So you want to make sure you check your supervisor of election website for that, okay? But just to go back to the primary election, we want everyone to register to vote so that your voice can be heard. Once again, July 20th, which is in 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks will be here before you know it. And so we want you to register to vote. We'll talk more as to, our Fed squad, and you getting out there in your local communities and getting everyone to register to vote. Also, after the primary election, we have the general election. So basically the primary election, you're going to be voting for your national, state, county, and your district office officials. So those people will be on the general election ballot. So that's why it's important that we have everyone to vote for the primary election, because whoever we vote for during the primary, is who's going to be on the general election ballot. All right, so our general election will be on November 3rd, and we want everyone to register to vote before July 20th. But if you happen to miss that date and you don't get a chance to vote for the primary election, you still have time to register to vote, but the deadline would be October 5th. Okay, so you will have to register to vote by October 5th in order for you to be able to vote in the general election. Okay, and once again, early voting for general election will be based on your county, and you will have to visit your supervisor of election website. Here's another important information: the vote by mail absentee ballot. With what's happening in our state, as everyone knows, the numbers are increasing like in droves. And so I know a lot of people are afraid. They don't want to go out to vote because it's going to be crowded and you don't want to be around people. You don't want to catch COVID, So voting by mail basically allows you to vote in the convenience of your own home. And so that is an option to anyone in Florida that's able to vote. Basically, if you are a qualified registered voter, you are entitled to vote by mail. Requesting a vote by mail ballot, you can either request it by email. You can go to your supervisor of elections website. You can also do it by phone as well. So you have many opportunities to vote, and one of the most important things, if you do the vote by mail, you want to make sure when you get it, you vote and you submit it right away, because we want every vote to count, whether you go in or you do an absentee ballot. So there are a couple of deadlines. If you do want to vote by mail, you have to request it by August 8th for the primary election. And for the general election, you have to request it by October 24th. But if you request a vote by mail for the primary election, you can go on the website and click that you want to have vote by mail for the general election too. That way you don't have to go back in and do it twice. You can request it that one time, and you will be able to receive your ballot in the mail for both the primary and the general election. And so I wanted to move into information in regards to who are we voting for? Why are we voting for these people? What do these people do? You know, those are some important things, because as we see things unfolding in our world, and we see that we have people on the opposite end of us that don't care about our communities. I just want to give a personal little story. Today I was watching C-SPAN, and they're voting on the police reform. And to see people on the opposite end coming up saying, we shouldn't have this bill passed because blah, blah, blah. Like, a lot of people really don't care about our communities. And these are people who are being voted in to represent us in Congress. And so it's very important that we know who we're voting for, and we get that information so that we can be on the right side and vote for the people who are for us. So I wanted some information so that we all can see it. So who could be on the ballot besides the president? And so, just as I was speaking, members of Congress, they represent you in Washington, in the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. They pass federal laws that apply to all Americans. So this is something that we should know. A sheriff, we know that voting for a sheriff will be on our ballots for the primary election. So, it's good to know what does the sheriff do? And so these are the things, and this is the information when it comes to not only voting, but we want to educate our people on who we're voting for and why we're voting for them.
Pam, if I could just jump in real quick. One of the things I just want to reiterate that you were sharing, I was having this conversation with my youngest son. When you make voting personal, what are your issues? So one of the things that him and I spoke about was he's a college student. So as it relates to what they're doing for education, what monies are they putting into higher education? I'm not a rich man, so he gets financial aid. So all those things that are personal to you, he's actually getting a tooth pulled. And I was telling him, when you go get your tooth pulled, that's not free. I have to pay for that. So now you're talking about healthcare and accessibility to healthcare. And then I mentioned to him about friends who were poorer than him, that their parents didn't have the money, say that his parents had. So I guess my point being, if I could just re-stress what you're saying, for our youth, especially those who are 18, 19, who are just starting the voting process, how important it is to understand how to make this personal for you. Healthcare, you have family members who have been incarcerated. What are some of the beliefs that your Attorney General has? All these kind of things that you really have to become informed in order to make an informed decision. I just want to affirm you everything that you're saying.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And so moving on, I just wanted, to just so that you can visually see exactly, what your state legislator, your mayor, what exactly do they do and why do they represent us? And you realize when we go into a state of emergency, who pops up on our screen in our local communities? Our mayors, right? Our mayor get up and our mayor starts speaking, and we're like, okay, then realize that person can, get up and say these things or, have this effect on my community. So it's just good to know that information. We also vote for judges. Judges will be on the ballot. Knowing that information, city council members, people who represent us in City Hall. So that type of information is what's, these type of candidates will be on the ballot. And it's just good to know what exactly do they do. And the more educated you become in regards to this information, you realize that it affects your community, your local community. So it's just important to do your research. You can go on your local supervisor of election website and you can pull up all the candidates. They have a link on the website that says candidates. You can click on it and it has a list of what they're running for, their name. Actually, it shows how much money they raised for their campaign, all that information. So you can go on to your supervisor of election for your local county and you can see that information as well. So most definitely, we want everyone's voice to be heard because the times that we're living in, voting has always been important, but we're living in such a time where everyone has to come together so that we can stand for our cause. And this movement that's happening right now, young people across the world is understanding that without them, change can't happen. And so we need everyone's voice to be heard. And so we just want everyone to just be a part and take an active part. And so speaking of that, we have come up with our Fed Squad volunteers. And so this is where your voice and where you can help the Federation. We want you to form groups, not only just in your church, but just your communities, so that you can spread the word about voting, how important it is to vote. You have a lot of young people who just graduated from high school who are 18-year-olds. And so an 18-year-old can register to vote and can vote. So we can get young people, whoever, we can get so many people involved in this movement because as we can see, we have a lot of people that are elected in office that don't want to see our people get justice. And it's just definitely unfair. So we want to just make sure that we're electing people in place that can hear us and understand our struggles and know that, we have a voice and we want equal rights as well. So we want you to get involved in your local communities, in your local churches, getting people to come together to definitely spread the word about our voting initiative. And so please, contact our president, Sister Bryant, in regards to how you can help and we can spread that information to you. There will be more information placed on the Federation's social media outlets in regards to that information. But please, we're asking and we want everyone to be a part because the times that we're living in, I can't stress it enough. We need everyone to be a part. We need everyone to take an active part in regards to moving forward and everyone being able to have a voice. Okay.
Tammy, if I may, I'm going to pose a question to Elder Henry. And that question is, how can we get our young people in our churches excited about registration for voting, especially when they don't see people of color on the ticket or on the ballot?
That's a good question, Sister B. I think, first of all, I want to give kudos, if I may, to Pastor Mack and Pastor Prince with the event that they had a couple of weeks ago down in Northside, I believe. And so to answer your question, I think it begins at the top. Anytime that you're doing anything as a young person, you look for leadership. And actually allow me to throw you in there, Sister Bryant, as well as with Federation, with events, with things that we're doing like right now, where we are informing. Because you know what, when I was 18, I wasn't being informed in the Adventist church about voting. It was almost, and if we're going to just be transparent, it was almost as if you were not to even be involved in voting. I remember hearing, what will be, Christ is coming. So it was kind of said without being said, that, not to vote. So to answer your question, I think it starts with leadership. I think our youth and young adult ministries need to be very active. And I mentioned this earlier, and I'll end here, helping our youth and young adults connect with why they're voting. One of the things we used to hear is say no to drugs. And unless people really understood why the results of drug use, you really couldn't understand. So I think the same thing, we hear folks say vote, helping us to understand why we should vote. Making that connection, make it personal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, if I may, Sister Bryant, just to share on that same point our dear elder just made. It is so vital for us to exercise this right. So understanding that we did not always have this right, and that there were so many people that fought, that gave their lives, that were placed in prison for us to be able to have even this right to be able to vote. And I believe that if we understand where we have come from and how far we are, but that we still have so much more to do, there's so much more work. And if we don't, as Elder Henry articulated, if we don't exercise this right and use this right and see it from the top, to see our leaders giving us the direction and the information and challenging us to continue to propel forward and to exercise this right, it'll stop. So we have to use this momentum that we have been able to, that has been created, and to continue to press towards the mark, because we know that the Lord is coming soon. But until he comes, there is work that needs to be done here.
Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So, in addition, I agree with everyone that went prior to me. I just want to add that I think sometimes a lot of young people see the ballot and are just overwhelmed with a bunch of names they're not familiar with. They would be happy to vote, but they don't really know what's going on. Like everything you just shared a while ago, there's a sheriff. Okay, who are the sheriffs on the ballot? There's a judge. Okay, who are the judge? It's almost like you're just circling random names. So I think sometimes there's truly like a lack of awareness about who it is and the value of each thing. I think as we're more empowered to understand what each section represents, almost like teaching, because this isn't fully taught in schools. So almost teaching it outside of school, like a real like teacher-student experience to say, this is what this line means and this is what this covers. This is who's going to be running for this position in Palm Beach County. This person says this and this person says that, but almost like a real lesson to break it down, because I have had more than one friend say, hey, I'm happy to vote. I just don't even know where to start. This is like a whole nother language and I don't know where to begin. So I think just being empowered in that regard. And the second thing I would say, because I think actually said, hi, I would like to introduce myself. I'm John Brown and I'm running for sheriff in Palm Beach County. If I could even put a face, that would help as well. So kind of having a better relationship, because it's truly like outside of president. That's why a lot of people just vote for the president. But when you're talking about all these other municipalities, a lot of white people, what they're doing is they're going and they're voting for their friends who they already have relationships with. But if we don't know them and we don't have relationships with them and we're not going to cocktail hour with them, then we don't know them like that. And so sometimes it's difficult to vote for a long list of strangers. But I really think just being informed or educated, or maybe a PowerPoint or a presentation, but I really think education on what is happening in that ballot will go a long distance.
Excellent information. And that's one of our goals, is to find ways that we can make it more personable. As far as we talked about it today, Tammy and I, we got to have people at our local churches that are willing to sign people up before the 20th. Put on our mask, find some way to be creative, to have that social distancing, and to sign people up and help them understand who these people are, what they're going to do if they're in the office, and all of that information. And I do agree. Thank you so much for that valuable information. And so we're going to do the best that we can. But the Federation is just a body of people. And we're talking about 3 districts that is large. And so we need everybody, as Tammy has said before, to get on board. And that's why we created this thing, Fed Squad Volunteers. We need volunteers that have the same passion as we do for change. We want to make some footprints in our communities. We want to see some things happening, but we cannot do it by just getting on this Zoom. We have to do some things. It's called action. So we have to do some things. And so now we have to come together, do some more discussion, and then come up with a plan that's going to work for the majority. Because at the end of the day, we want it to look like when Obama was running for president. We want all our people to get out and vote, because there is power in numbers.
Sister B, if I could just chime in as well. One of the things I was going to just share as well is that for a lot of the folks who are, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, for a lot of the folks who are running, your sheriff, your district attorneys, you take just the Federation and the sheer numbers, especially when you get to the state level, that the Southeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, all the folks that are part of that we have those numbers, and we can actually influence some of their agendas. One of the things that I'm passionate about, that I want to hear from from those who are running, are the food deserts in our community. And so when we're talking about funding for different things, I want that accessibility for Black and brown communities to be able to get fresh vegetables and things of that nature. We know there's a proliferation of dollar stores in our community. So I'm just speaking of one topic that we can get just our Black Adventists out to vote, or to hold these folks who are running accountable. We can influence what their agenda is. Of course, we know about police brutality and health disparity and things of that nature, but it doesn't always have to be so grand. You can start small, like you said, this is just the first step of many steps, but being able to unify on issues that will help improve our communities.
I got more. I have something too. I just posted a picture in the chat. I don't know if you guys are able to see it if you click on it, but when you click on it, you'll see it says that Trump won Florida by 113,000 votes. In Miami, 379,000 Blacks didn't vote. Do you guys see that image there when you click it? I don't know if it's opening for you guys. Is it opening for you guys? Yeah, no, maybe?
I'm trying to pull it up now.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so I love documents like this or statistics like this that really show the power of our vote. It shows in multiple states. It says in Michigan, Trump won by 11,000, but in Detroit, 277,000 Blacks didn't vote. In Pennsylvania, 44,000. Trump won by 44,000. In Philadelphia, 236. So really showing the statistics and the value of our vote, because we're often, and I feel like I'm preaching preaching to the choir because everyone here is probably interested. That's why they're here. But nevertheless, it's truly knowing, yes, it's valuable when we march and all these great things. But this is where we really need to pull up. We need to be marching to the polls, too. We have to march to both places. So really, I don't know whether it be, statistics like this or information like I shared before, but I think they're all hopeful.
So what do we say to someone who says to you, my one vote will not make a difference? What do we say to someone who has that mentality?
Can I give you a story to that? I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, back when George Bush and Al Gore they were competing each other to become president. In a way, I was one of the mail-in votes. And if you remember, I think it was 300 people that came. You probably could speak to that better than I could. But it was literally like 300 people. And I remember I got my mail-in vote in Memphis, Tennessee, and I left that mail-in vote on the table. Because you know what I said? My one vote that won't make a big difference. And it came down to those 300 mail-in votes. And so I'm one of the reasons that George Bush became president. Because I felt that my one vote didn't matter. And so, to your question, which is excellent, everybody has to act like, and this is how and I tell my children this, you have to act like on the day of the election is your vote that's going to make a difference.
Amen.
And so,
yes.
and that's how that's the energy that you have to have.
And I have, for me as well, it's almost like I cannot control what is outside of my realm. And by that, I mean, I give my tithes. I can't control who doesn't. I give my tithes because that is my personal responsibility. I do my part. So everyone needs to do their part. And in that way, the collective agenda will be served. But not doing something because, if I don't do it, it won't get as far. That's not on you. Your job is to get, if you have a tenth, give your tenth. Your tenth might be a penny. Your tenth might be a million. You give your tenth, you go give your vote, and eventually it'll add up. It's a personal responsibility. And this is what, bothers me, because sometimes we so systematically think that we don't matter, that we don't realize how much we do. And that's why there are all these generational gaps and all these different issues. I mean, this is not the only reason, but we have to be strategic in bridging the problem that we didn't create. That's not our fault. But just sitting saying, well, I don't matter, will never create change. That's not what our ancestors did. We wouldn't be experiencing some of the luxuries we have today if they thought that they didn't matter. They made sacrifices for us. And now that they've passed over the baton, we can't just sit here and be like, oh, we don't matter. Is that what Harriet Tubman said? Is that what all of them said? But that's a whole nother talk. Sorry.
Sister Bree, can I ask Tammy a question?
Surely.
So my question for you is, with COVID-19 going on, there are a lot of college students that went home because it started like doing spring break. So a lot of them may have gone back home or still be here in Florida. What do you say to those who have not registered to vote, but they're not in their home state?
So if they're not in their home state and they want to register to vote, they can go online and request an absentee ballot and still vote. As long as they check their supervisor of elections website to make sure they are checking the deadlines, to make sure they're doing it before the deadline, they can request the ballot, get it, send it in, mail it back, and their vote still will count. So even if you're not at home, you still can get an absentee vote by mail ballot. Absolutely.
And one other question, what is the mandate for Florida as it relates to ex-offenders? We have a lot of people who right now they've been incarcerated, and can they vote or can they not vote? What's the stance on that?
Well, I know there was something that was passed in regards to that, that they can vote. But I will have to get the verbiage. I don't have the verbiage. I don't want to say the wrong thing on Zoom. But there is something I believe that they can. I think it was passed that they can vote. But I don't know the exact verbiage when it comes to that, the ex-offenders.
So maybe you could post it in the chat
Yes.
So to be there, okay. I know that's a question that someone asked me.
Right. I will definitely get that information because I did see something on the supervisor of election, but I just want to make sure I have the right verbiage. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I got you.
Yes.
And so my next question is to Michael, Wayne, and things of that nature. So for a lot of us, if the church is not doing it, then we are timid about doing something. And I believe that Elder Henry mentioned before that, churches, even myself being older, it wasn't something that we talked about in church. It was almost like if the world was voting, but as a Seventh-day Adventist, we were not voting. And it wasn't because I came an adult and I learned a whole lot of stuff, but it's almost like it's quiet. Recently, I've heard more about voting in the church. So my question to Michael and to any of you is, how do we get our parents involved in pushing their young people, their youth and young adults? How do we get the pastors involved as far as this initiative? Because as we stated today, it has to be action. We can talk and discuss, but we got to do some things. I think Tammy said it so perfectly when she said we only have 3 weeks for them to go ahead and register so they can be prepared for the primary, which is coming up in August. So what do we do to ignite, to encourage, to empower, that this is not a fight, that this is about coming together to make some things happen. This is not about competition, because we know that there are people talking about voting across the world. And so this little small organization is just a piece of that. And we want to do whatever we can to make sure that God is pleased. And so the question is, especially to Michael and to Wayne, give us some insight on that. What do you think?
So if I may, you're absolutely right, where it was taboo, right? Like those weren't conversations that we used to have in the church. But one conversation that I remember is when we used to go out and pass out tracts. They would always say, each one, reach one, right? And it's like a force multiplier. So it's those relationships. So what do we say to our young people to empower them, or to our church bodies to get them motivated to want to vote? It starts with a relationship. What if each person were to reach one person, leverage their relationships with the young people, leverage their relationships with their friend? We used to have Sabbath potlucks, right? Like everybody would get excited and we used to have a lot of conversation. What if we were actually now, since we're in quarantine, still just pick up the phone, right? And call somebody and check on them. And when you're checking on them, hey, are you registered to vote? Let's make sure that our vote matters and have those personal conversations and leveraging our personal connections. Each one can reach one. The power of one can change many. So
Good
that
stuff.
would be what I would tell them.
Good stuff, Michael. Love it.
Yeah. I did notice that there was a bad stigmatism about voting a while ago, but I noticed within the past recent situations with like mass killings and stuff like that, our younger generation are adapting to thought process of voting to change things. And I think that their generation is gravitating to that more, to change things, where we did certain things and we were like, as far as older folk, we would just talk about it in seclusion and stuff like that. But I am seeing that it is becoming more of a recognizable and accepted way of socialism. And although recently with the racism issues and the violence towards our people, that's motivating them and strengthening them. But we need to capitalize that, as Michael said earlier, to motivate them more. I think in conversation now, like we just had a drive-by graduation, and I was sort of doing an MC thing, but along with congratulating them, I was also throwing out there, hey, go out there and register to vote, because that generation, probably don't, like Tammy was saying earlier, don't know how to get involved with that. And as a church, we kind of stayed away from a lot of political things, but I'm noticing a lot of our Adventist folks are streaming into that political field, and we should reach out to them or more to come back and get more involved with these churches, not just during their political run, but afterwards as well, to contribute information that will also reach the older folk as well as the younger folk. Because once we get into that realm of conditional thinking that it's okay, it's not a stigma, it should broaden and ease it a little bit more. Like, I'm a registered voter. I'm proud to vote. I share that information with anybody that asks me, Adventist or not. But I think it's our right, and we should take heed to that and just use that. But in conversation with our younger folk, just let them know, hey, it's important that you vote for people that make these laws that you're living in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that the person that you can read about, to learn about who's your judge, your sheriff, who's everything else that affects you remotely or otherwise will impact your community. We should encourage them to return the census that's out there. We want to get them more involved in things that will affect them in the future for their kids as well. So it's about conversation.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Did I see your hand, Elder Ricardo?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so my next question is this, and I think Catherine really made a statement. Tammy alluded to it in her presentation, and that is, how do we get our young people to really know the candidates that are running for these different positions? So what are you going to do as a Fed Squad leader or volunteer in your particular community? How do you get them to know a little bit about these people that are running for these positions? It's essential that they know. You don't just want them to say eeny, meeny, miny, mo. They need to know exactly who and why they're voting for these people. It's so important. So now we have a task. So how can we be creative? And Michael had a good idea by making phone calls, because we're in quarantine, and say one-on-one, each one reach one. But we have 3 weeks for them to be voted, and then after that, they need to know who they're voting for and why they're voting. So what do we tell them? How do we do this in our communities, in our districts? South Florida Federation is Miami-Dade, Broward, as well as Palm Beach. What can we do?
If I could just piggyback off of what Mike said, and really, it's the cornerstone of this, is that just that interpersonal relationship. One of the things I do with the young people in my church, I have those conversations with them, and I think what needs to be clearly understood is your life and voting is intermeshed. It doesn't operate opposite of each other or in isolation. So where you live, there's a reason you live where you live. Your school, there's a reason your school is the way that it is. When you go to the hospital, there's a reason you go to that particular hospital. It's all intertwined. And I think if I could just make this point and just make the conversation to another place, I think as Black Adventists, we live with the duality of being Adventist but being Black. And those two often they don't meet at a common corner. And so what we're trying to do now as Black Adventists, we're trying to meet at a common corner as relates to holding our officials accountable. Elder Arbery, who's at Elder Mike's church, I know he ran. Is he still the vice mayor for his city?
Yes, he is. He is the mayor of Magnolia Park.
Yeah. So, and I'm just going to go back to what Tammy said. She was mentioning about people registering to vote. I'm going to submit to our young people, not only register to vote, but run for office. Because just like those folks have their issues and their visions on where Broward, Palm Beach, Dade, Florida, the United States go, you have your vision. So you run for office as well. So I just want to just encourage, as we talk to them, to answer your question, through our personal relationships, let's push them to run for some of these offices.
Good stuff.
We should. I think we should also show somehow visuals of some of our Adventist folks that have made it in the political field up that ladder. We have Senator Brise, I know Commissioner Weinstein, and I think there's a couple more, Jim. I think the mayor of Miami Gardens was raised Adventist. But those type of images, they need to see and understand that we can be involved in a political level to make changes in our community.
I got something too. I believe like social media is such a huge tool nowadays in terms of getting information out. Like that's how all these viral videos are going. Everybody's on Instagram and Facebook and every book nowadays. So I don't know, like whether it be a simple picture or something on Instagram, like what to expect on your ballot, kind of like what you explained, but just in picture form, posted along. It's easy to, everyone is on social media, and whether it's forwarded or in stories or things like that, I think that's a really quick and nice way for information to get out, whether it be a picture of a candidate of what they stand for or what will be on the ballot. But I think utilizing social media will truly help in getting information out.
Excellent.
I just wanted to add to that. You can go on the Supervisor of Election website and you can request for a sample ballot, and they will send you a sample ballot so that you can be familiar with what's going to be on the ballot when you vote. So you can request a sample ballot if you want, to know what's happening, what's going to be on the ballot before you go in and vote, because not everybody's going to request an absentee ballot. I hear from a lot of people, I don't trust it. I'd rather just go to the polls. So you don't want to walk in blindsided. So you can go and request a sample ballot from your supervisor of election on their website.
Do we call them or something? I have been looking for a sample ballot. I don't even know.
What county are you? Broward, Davis?
Palm Beach County.
Palm Beach. I will probably have to take a look at it. Like I said, I'm very familiar with Broward County because I'm in Broward. But I believe Palm Beach, when I was looking at the website last night, they did have something where you can request a sample ballot from Palm Beach as well. But you can request one so that, like I said, you can be aware of what to expect on the day that you actually walk into the polls.
Exactly. That'd be good.
Excellent. Good information. And so with that being said, I believe that we have enough information to get us started. The most important thing, Tammy, and we want to reiterate those dates. So we know that everybody who is of age would need to register by July 20th.
Yes, July 20th. If you want to be a part and you want your voice to be heard for the primary election, which is an important election, okay? You want to be registered before July 20th. July 20th is the last day. If you don't register before that day, you won't be allowed, your voice won't be heard for the primary election. So July 20th is the last day.
Okay.
Mr. B,
That's around the corner.
Can we run a timer on the Federation's page? This is like a countdown for that? 'Cause that's pretty significant.
We can definitely do that. We'll let the guys know and we'll make that happen. I think that's a very a good idea, and thank you so much for that. Let me just say this. If you have any questions that we did not answer tonight, we want you to go ahead and email us at sfayf@secsda.org, or you can call me at 954-249-4137. It is our desire, and we are very intentional, that we are going to continue this marathon. And again, I mentioned earlier, this is only 1 mile, and we have a long way to go. And so we will be meeting again for Let's Talk, a discussion on Monday, where we will dialogue again, and we will come up with some other things that we want to do, but it's just one step at a time. We don't want to we don't want to put out that we're doing this, doing that, and doing this. We want to perfect voting because it's right upon us. And so we want to do that for everybody, for our young people. And we want to get everybody involved. And this is not just about us because we're Adventists. This is about our communities. And so whether you are Adventist or you're not Adventist, we welcome you to be a part of this initiative. We want to create and have the people to the polls so they can vote. Because as Tammy said, this primary election is essential because it's those people that we're going to be voting for. Their names are going to be carried over. And we want to make sure that they understand where we are and the changes that we need to see made. I agree that we need to bring some people on so that our young people, Elder Henry, can see the faces of those that are in politics and that are doing the right thing and trying to make a difference. We need to do that. So we will do that. We appreciate everybody who's seeing this tonight. And we thank our presenter, Tammy, excellent job. We thank the rest of our crew, Michael, Elder Henry, Wayne, Catherine. We thank all of you for being a part. And we look forward. So continue to follow us on our social media. That is the way we get the word out. That's the way you're going to know what's happening. And again, we are not here to compete. We want to join in with everybody who has a passion for this initiative. And we want to make a difference together, not separately. We want to make a difference. So we thank you and we appreciate that. And we're going to ask if Elder Henry can kind of give us our closing marks and close us out.
All right. Sister Bryant, again, please allow me to just affirm you on your efforts tonight. I know a lot of times when you're trying to do something that hasn't been done, and when there's also, you have your naysayers out there. So we just want to pray your strength, your courage, and we applaud your vision on this. I've been part of Federation since I was a little boy, and I think this is one of the first times I've seen this sort of community impact. So we just affirm you to that end.
Thank you so much, and God be praised.
All right. Okay. This time we'll go ahead and pray. Wonderful Lord and Savior, we thank you so much for all that you are doing. We realize even in the midst of this turmoil that you are still in the middle of this. And we know that the way that you work is so different from the way that man works. And we understand that this opportunity to come together and to strategize and, Lord, and to look out for people who have historically been marginalized. And so, God, we take that task very seriously. We want to pray in a very special way for our leaders. In particular, we want to pray for our conference president, Pastor Mack. We want to pray for our youth leader, Pastor Prince. And in a special way, we want to pray for our Federation president, Sister Vivian Bryant, dear Lord, during this time. Keep them strengthened, keep them lifted up, dear Lord. We pray tonight, dear Lord, for our youth and young adults. They are our future, dear God. So we want to pray for them discernment, for them the ability to be able to take charge, to take lead. We pray for those visionaries that are just little babies now, but they will be coming through the ranks. We want to pray for them in particular. We pray for the pastors and the church boards of the various churches, dear Lord. But God, we just pray that we all, as Brian said, that we will not compete, but indeed be collaborative in our approach to take care of our people. Again, take us from this place, but never from your presence. These are many blessings we ask in your son's precious name. And for his sake, let all God's children say, amen.
Amen. Stay safe and take care. And we'll see you on Monday. All right. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.